Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're tackling structured finance. CLOs, CMOs, CDOs. They can seem incredibly complex.
I definitely have that reputation.
Yeah, and their world really shifted after 2008. So our mission today is pretty straightforward. Cut through the jargon, figure out what they actually are, check their pulse as of October 2025, and look closely at this reported comeback of synthetic risk. We've got a good pile of sources giving us the mechanics and a snapshot of the market right now. Okay, let's unpack this.
Right. So structured finance, at its heart, it's about pooling assets. Think loans, mortgages, that kind of thing.
Okay.
Then repackaging them into securities to sell to investors. It really took off in the 80s, mostly for banks to get risk off their books and, well, boost liquidity.
And 2008 changed things.
Oh, absolutely. Post-crisis reforms brought in more transparency, more capital requirements. But the fundamental engine driving all of this, the thing we really need to understand, is tranching.
Tranching, okay.
Yeah, it's basically slicing.
Yeah.
Slicing the pool of assets into different risk levels. You get everything from super safe, AAA-rated senior pieces down to much riskier equity pieces at the bottom.
Got it. So that tranching concept, that's what allows different investors to buy in, depending on their appetite for risk, I suppose.
Exactly. Pension funds might want the safe stuff. Hedge funds might go for the higher yield, higher risk equity.
Okay, let's define the main players here, starting with CLOs. Our sources highlight collateralized loan obligations. These are pools of corporate loans, leveraged ones.
That's right. Primarily pools of leveraged corporate loans. So loans made to companies that already have a fair bit of debt.
And for the banks originating them, it's about shifting risk.
Primarily, yes. Offload the credit risk, free up balance sheet space. For investors, though, it's about yield.
Yield, okay. What kind?
Well, the underlying loans are typically non-investment grade, but they are senior secured debt, which offers some protection. And crucially, CLOs often pay a floating rate.
Ah, so linked to interest rates, like SOFR now.
Exactly. Usually linked to SOFR. That's a secured overnight financing rate, the replacement for LIBOR. So if rates go up, the CLO coupon generally goes up too. That's a big draw for investors worried about inflation or rising rates.
Okay, I see the appeal there. So CLOs handle corporate debt risk. How do CMOs, collateralized mortgage obligations, differ? They're backed by mortgages, obviously, but what's their main structural trick?
With CMOs, the main focus shifts from default risk, though that's still there, to prepayment risk.
Prepayment, meaning homeowners paying off their mortgages early, like when they refinance.
Precisely. If rates fall, homeowners refinance, and the investor who bought the CMO suddenly gets their principal back sooner than expected, disrupting their cash flow plans.
Right. So how do CMOs manage that?
They use tranching again, but specifically to sequence the principal payments. So the structure directs all the principal paydowns first to the earliest or fastest paying tranches until they're fully repaid. Then the next tranche starts getting principal and so on. It creates predictability for investors who want, say, a 5-year cash flow versus a 20-year one. It helps channel massive amounts of capital into the mortgage market.
Makes sense. And then there's the big umbrella term, CDOs, collateralized debt obligations. This can be anything.
Pretty much. It's the broader category. CDOs can pool corporate loans like CLOs, mortgages like CMOs, or even other asset-backed securities, or even tranches of other CDOs.
Okay, quite the mix. But regardless of what's inside loans, mortgages, whatever, it all comes down to how the money flows through these tranches, right? The waterfall.
Exactly. The tranche waterfall is crucial, and it operates through something called a special purpose vehicle, or SPV.
The SPV, that's the legal entity that actually holds the assets.
Yes, and it's key. It's set up to be legally separate from the bank that originated the loans or mortgages.
Why is that separation so important?
Bankruptcy remoteness. If the originating bank goes bust, the assets in the SPV are theoretically protected and keep paying the CDO investors. It's a major structural protection.
Okay, so the SPV collects the payments from borrowers. Then what?
Then it pays out according to the waterfall. The senior tranche is AAA rated, lowest risk get paid first, they absorb losses last.
So low risk, low yield.
Typically, yes. Then you go down the capital structure, AA, A, BBB, the mezzanine tranche's risk and potential yield increase. And right at the bottom is the equity tranche.
The first to take a hit.
The very first. It absorbs initial losses, but if things go well, it gets all the leftover cash flow, potentially offering the highest returns. It's all about allocating risk precisely.
Okay. That framework makes sense. Now let's pivot to the market today, October 2025. The sources paint a mixed picture, catchphrase. Here's where it gets really interesting.
It is quite nuanced right now.
Let's start with the good news, or at least the stable news. The CLO market seems pretty healthy.
Remarkably so, actually. Issuance is strong. The projection for 2025 is around $215 billion.
Which is up from last year.
Yeah, up from about $190 billion in 2024. And importantly, the underlying credit performance looks decent. Defaults are actually expected to decline a bit, maybe to around 2.6% in the U.S.
Okay. So the core CLO engine is running smoothly. What about the mortgage side, the MBS and CMO world?
Generally stable, too.
Yeah.
Helped by interest rates easing off their peaks. We're seeing decent activity. Private label RMBS issuance, for example, was up 13% year over year earlier in the year.
And other related ABS, asset-backed securities.
It's a bit mixed there, but broadly okay. Things like equipment ABS are up, maybe 11% year to date. Some areas like subprime auto ABS are down slightly, maybe 4% year over year. So some pockets of concern, but generally holding up.
But you mentioned a contradiction, a real tension point. Where's the stress showing up?
The stress is definitely concentrated in commercial MBS, CMBS, specifically office properties.
Ah, the return to office or lack thereof.
Exactly. The data is pretty stark. Delinquency rates for loans backing office buildings within CMBS pools have climbed significantly. One source pegs it at 7.03%.
7%. Wow, that's high.
It is. And the concern is that this isn't just a temporary economic downturn thing. It feels more structural. The shift to remote and hybrid work hitting older office buildings hard as leases expire. It suggests a potential long-term impairment in value for that specific slice of the CMBS market.
That 7.03% is definitely an alarm bell then. Okay, another point from the sources back in the CLO space, which seems healthy overall, there's this mention of intense competition with private credit.
Right, that's a big theme.
And it's leading to looser covenants on the underlying loans. Why is that a worry if the CLO market itself looks okay?
Well, it's a potential future worry. Covenants are the rules the borrowing company has to follow, like maintaining certain financial ratios.
What, fine print?
Kind of, yeah. If those rules get weaker, covenant light they sometimes call it, the lenders, and by extension the CLO investors have fewer protections if the company starts to struggle.
So harder to step in early or recover value if things go wrong?
Exactly. It means when a default does happen, the losses could be worse. It's a classic sign of a hot market lenders competing so hard for deals that they accept weaker terms. Yield now, maybe more pain later.
That search for yield. It feels like a recurring theme. And it leads us right into the really complex stuff, synthetic CDOs.
Yes. The instruments that became infamous back in 2008.
So the absolute key difference here compared to the cash CLOs or CMOs we discussed, synthetic CDOs don't actually own the underlying loans or bonds, do they?
Right. No physical assets. Instead, they use derivatives, specifically credit default swaps or CDS.
CDS, like insurance policies on debt.
That's a good way to think about it. A CDS contract pays out if a specific credit event, usually a default, happens on a reference entity, like a company's bond.
Okay.
A synthetic CDO creates its tranches based on the risk of a portfolio of these CDS contracts rather than a pool of actual loans. One party is effectively selling protection, like the insurer, collecting premiums, and the other is buying protection, paying premiums to hedge risk or to speculate on defaults.
So you can bet on defaults without owning the debt. How did that structure allow risk to just explode leading up to the financial crisis?
Leverage and duplication. Because you didn't need to own the underlying bond to buy or sell CDS protection on it. The same bond's risk could be referenced in multiple CDS contracts, and then those contracts could be pooled into multiple synthetic CDOs.
So the notional amount, the face value being insured, could vastly exceed the actual amount of debt out there.
Massively. The sources highlight this jump. Synthetic CDO issuance went from maybe $15 billion in 2005 to $61 billion in 2006. By 2008, the total notional value of these things in the U.S. was estimated at something like $5 trillion.
$5 trillion on derivatives referencing other assets. That's mind-boggling leverage.
It was huge, and the models used to price the risk in these structures, well, they had serious flaws.
The Gaussian copula function gets mentioned a lot.
Yes, that was a common one. The problem was it, and similar models, fundamentally underestimated correlation risk. They assumed defaults on different mortgages or bonds were sort of independent, or at least correlated in a stable, predictable way.
But in a crisis, everything correlates, right? Everything goes down together.
Exactly. When the housing market turned, suddenly lots of mortgages defaulted simultaneously in a way the models didn't predict. Correlations spiked. Those safe senior tranches of synthetic CDOs, especially those referencing mortgage debt, were suddenly facing losses they were never supposed to. The models failed spectacularly.
Which then triggered margin calls, forced selling, panic,
Yeah.
the whole domino effect.
The whole contagion spiral.
Catchphrase. So what does this all mean? Fast forward to October 2025. Regulations are tighter now, definitely. More capital, more transparency required. But the sources note this. Renewed interest in complex yield-generating instruments, including synthetics, partly because rates aren't super high.
The yield hunt is back, to some extent.
So what are the persistent risks we should be watching with synthetics, even in today's environment?
Well, complexity itself is a risk. These are still opaque instruments.
Yeah.
And leverage is still inherent in the structure.
How much leverage are we talking?
The sources suggest that mezzanine tranches, the middle risk ones in synthetics, can still effectively amplify the underlying risk by maybe 7 to 10 times compared to just holding the asset directly.
Wow, okay. So a small move in the underlying portfolio has a huge impact there.
A huge impact. And while regulations have clamped down on the most obvious conflicts, like banks overtly betting against products they sold to clients, the potential for hidden risks or unexpected correlations remains. When complexity meets a desperate search for yield, things can still go wrong.
Right. So pulling it all together for 2025, it's this strange mix. We've got the mainstream structured finance market, like CLOs, showing pretty good resilience, benefiting from post-crisis fixes.
Yeah, stable issuance, defaults relatively low in that space.
But at the same time, you have these pockets of real stress, like that 7% delinquency in office CMBS.
A major red flag in a key sector.
And this underlying pressure, this hunt for yield, seems to be nudging some investors back towards the really complex, highly leveraged stuff like synthetics.
It's a paradox, isn't it? The system seems more robust in some ways, thanks to regulation, but investor behavior seeking higher returns, especially when rates aren't extremely high, can still drive demand for complexity and leverage.
So the core risks haven't vanished entirely?
No, definitely not. Geopolitical uncertainty, worries about consumer spending, those sector-specific blow-ups like commercial real estate, they all feed into the potential risks within these structured products.
So the advice remains, focus on quality.
Pretty much. The sources emphasize sticking to high-quality senior tranches, especially if you're risk-averse. Diversification helps. Understanding exactly what you own and where it sits in that waterfall is more crucial than ever.
Okay. That focus on quality versus complexity and the memory of how synthetics amplified risk. It sets up our final provocative thought for you, the listener. The sources mention commentators drawing parallels. Parallels between the risks embedded in those pre-crisis synthetic CDOs, the extreme leverage, the opacity, the models failing on correlation, and some new financial innovations popping up today.
Interesting point.
The question is, have those fundamental risks the ability to create massive hidden leverage, the potential for correlation assumptions to break down spectacularly, this sheer difficulty in seeing where risk is concentrated? Have they really gone away? Or have they just migrated? Could they be quietly rebuilding in less regulated corners, maybe linked to certain types of stablecoins, or perhaps embedded in the complex algorithms used for, say, AI-generated financial data?
That's chilling thought.
It is. The core mechanics of risk transfer, leverage, and betting on outcomes. They're ancient. Maybe it's just the packaging that keeps changing. Something to think about.